The tilt is real.
The tilt is real.
This is when the tilt is real. Let's go.
Welcome to another episode of The Tilt is Real Fantasy Podcast. Coming to you live from the chef's table, here are your hosts, James Crease and Juan Pena. Let's go.
Welcome in, you tilters. It is Wednesday, August 21st, and we are going live on StreamYard, brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. And I am your host, James Crease, joined at the chef's table with my co-host, Mr. Juan Carlos Pena. What's going on, big guy?
Chef, we're talking about football. We're together. It's absolutely fantastic, man.
It's awesome. It's awesome. You can't
do better.
And the man from the shadows, Mr. FF John JAWN Swanson, our producer, is with us as well as always. What's going on, Mr. Swanson?
It is October, my dudes. It's spooky time.
You're looking kind of spooky over there, man.
Him, I feel spooky. Yeah. Happy to be here. Happy to be with y'all. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday indeed. We have a jam-packed show for you guys out there this today.
As always, yes, sir.
We'll start it out per usual. We can say per usual on the show. Sure. We're pretty classy here. Weekly reel. We always have our weekly reel. And then we also have on the show the waiver wire heroes. We will be going over that sheet. And that sheet's been winning some people some fantasy leagues.
I've been tweeting.
That's
all
really
week, Chef.
Cool, by the way.
Yo,
I think that's awesome.
Mr. Swanson, that team beats most of my rosters. I have 10 leagues that I'm in, and that team that we put out week to week can stand up to any fantasy team because all those guys have been hitting every single week.
So far, so good, man.
We've talked a little bit off show, and I feel like I need to flip my whole team for some of those waiver wire sheets.
Right. Yeah,
just give it away and give me all the waivers.
It's time to move. It's time to make some moves and move some guys, especially if you find yourself like 1-5, like I'm 1-5 in a couple leagues, and I got to find a way to get back in it. I'm going to have to package some guys and then focus on things like the waiver wire heroes team.
1-5 is kind of a cool spot to be in, though, not to cut you off, because you honestly got to throw out the playbook. You start completely over. You fire yourself. You rehire yourself with a mustache. I'm the new coach. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I'm like the Adam Gase. I'm still there. I'm still there losing. That's what I feel like right now.
Speaking of Adam Gase, anyway. I was wondering this. I didn't see it on the show sheet. Do you guys think Harbaugh is going to be eventually be coaching the Jets? He doesn't have a contract next year in Michigan.
Ooh, that's interesting. I thought it was a Dabo Sweeney slam dunk, but Harbaugh moving over, maybe
it makes the most sense. Think about all the teams that Harbaugh has gone to and improved. Every team.
He started out as a special teams coach with the Eagles, and then now with the Ravens.
Mm-hmm. Like, look at where.
Wait. Are you talking about John or Jim?
I'm talking about Jim, cuz.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about Michigan State Jim, man. I'm talking about Jim.
Michigan. Whoa. Yeah. Whoa, Michigan.
I didn't hear
that. Hold on. I like that take, Mr. Swanson.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't have a contract next year. It seems to me that
he failed in the NFL the first time, didn't he?
No, he did great with the 49ers and took them to the Super Bowl.
He had
Kaepernick.
And then Kaepernick fizzled out, and he fizzled out with
he left.
If you look at his track record, he improves teams wherever they go. And I don't think he's going to beat Ohio State. I don't think that's what his whole thing is, right?
Yeah, he's had trouble being.
I don't know a lot about college.
Absolutely right. Listen, he has had trouble.
Same division, conference rather.
That's the first time I've heard that take, and I'm glad we're putting this on wax and that it's live. So Mr. Swanson gets the credit if Jim Harbaugh ends up coaching the Jets. That's a dark horse. I thought it was Dabo Sweeney slam dunk. Mm-hmm. I really didn't think. You
didn't know that horse was in the race.
No, that one came all the way from behind, man. Wow. Great call, Mr.
Swanson. If I were the guy who owned the Jets, I would
Woody Johnson.
Hey, Woody.
I would make sure I would just be fed up with everything, and I would want to bring in a guy that's been in the NFL before, that knows how to win, and then especially knows how to turn teams around, because it's not just being a good coach when it comes to like the X's and O's. Exactly. Yeah. It's your clubhouse presence. It's the pulse of the team. It's being a leader. And I think I could see him going to New York and saving the Jets because someone needs to save the Jets. Oh shit! I mean,
Yeah,
no shit.
someone does need to save the Jets. You're right though.
Someone
Big
needs to save the
market.
Jets. God save
It
the
makes
Jets.
sense. It makes
Great. Now I got to go
sense.
back and edit this. He dropped the S word.
Hey,
It
listen, it's
it makes
okay.
a lot of
Everyone's
sense.
even Disney movies allow one or two here and there.
It was a skit.
Yeah.
Skit and scene.
It was a sit and start.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Let's get right into that weekly reel, boys.
Let's get right to it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
It's the weekly reel, presented by the Tilt is Real. It's the weekly reel. Let me hear the news. OJ does lard time. I love seeing that.
You love that video, don't you?
Yeah,
I
man,
love
that's
it.
great. Good work. Great work.
Thank you. We got some real big news this week with
Big news.
with the Miami Dolphins, Juan, your team.
Mm-hmm.
How's it
And
feel, boy?
it's good news for one and always bad news for another.
Yep.
And I'm as shocked as Fitzpatrick was when he got the news that he was not the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins anymore. That Tua Tagovailoa will be starting in week 8 against the LA Rams.
Chef, 21 quarterbacks since Dan Marino. And I'm not going to sit here and name all of them. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go Brock Heward, Jay Fiedler, Cleo Lemon, Chad Pennington, Ryan Tannehill, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, I'm not going to go through all of them right now, but it's
I
been a
love
lot.
that last one, though.
Ray Lucas, you know what I mean? Yeah, I love
Devin.
out of all of those guys that have been here before, even with a little bit of success that Tannehill had and he showed a little bit of promise, Ryan Fitzpatrick is my favorite out of those. The way he handled this before he found out the news and the class with which he treated Tua, he referenced being mentored and being taught a lot about the game by Carson Palmer in his early years and how much he wanted to pay that forward and send it off to the new rookie and give him his just due and help him in the right way. And it was the classy move, and you would expect nothing less from a guy like that. And I made fun of Fitzpatrick for a lot of years, and he was Fitztragic or he was Fitzmagic, and he was up and down, but he's been gritty, he's been a warrior, he's been smart, and he's a really cool dude. And this was like exuding his coolness to be able to treat Tua the way he did. But the transition was inevitable, Chef. All we were waiting for was for Tua to be right so he can get in there and show us what he's got.
Yeah, you're right. It was inevitable.
Right.
It was definitely inevitable. You can't make that. I mean, they drafted him where they drafted him for a reason, and he is their future. They're 3-3.
Yep.
They're 3-3.
At 500
Fitz
after
did
7
a great
games.
job, I think.
Yeah, he
Oh,
did.
yeah,
He held it
everybody-
down. Much
Everybody
respect.
pooped on the Dolphins, man. Everybody's.
I think it was a group. I think it was a group thing. I think he rallied the troops.
He did.
I think he
it's
built the
absolutely a
culture.
group
He
thing.
helped with that culture there.
Yeah, of course.
And it's going to be interesting to see how Tua can lead that group now that the more experienced quarterback steps back.
You know, you saw him not be Fitztragic very often. He controlled the ball. He didn't turn it over. He did everything he needed to do to run the offense. But Tua gives you something different. Now they see
This
that
is
their
the
defense,
tragedy.
this is a playoff defense. Make no mistake. And you've seen it the last few weeks. What they did to the 49ers wasn't a fluke. And to shut a team out, even if it's the Jets, they held them to 0. Everybody else, the Jets have found a way to score points. We held them to 0. So
that defense is fire.
Right. So if the defense is real and they're finally healthy and they can make a playoff run, now your question becomes, can you take that next step and beat someone in the playoffs with Fitzpatrick, or do you need the dynamicism of a Tua to get you over that hurdle and see how much you really have going into next year where you have a bunch of draft picks, a bunch of cap room? Are you going to make a push next year to take that leap? We've seen the Bills falter a little bit, and maybe that played into the decision as well. Like, let's go for it now. We're only 1 game behind the Bills. Let's go for it.
I love it. You can sense the confidence in Juan's voice.
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
been waiting for this for years, for decades.
Yeah, decades.
Decades. And Mr. Swanson, you're an Eagles fan, and I myself am a Giants fan, and we talk off show all the time about how our team's winning the Super Bowl. And you know what? Maybe it's Juan's time. He's killing it in fantasy football. His Miami Dolphins are becoming the real Dolphins of old.
It's really great to see them.
Like, we really haven't seen a great
blow up
Dolphins
into
team
this.
since Don Shula coached the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And with Marino.
Yeah.
And this is why some of us especially
And they never won a Super Bowl
in our age group,
No.
want to see the Miami
I would
Dolphins
love
actually
to
succeed.
see the
I would
Miami
love to see the
Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins
Me too.
succeed, and I'm not even a Dolphins fan.
I feel like in every sport, I have a team. I have like a B team. Like I'm a Phillies fan, but for the longest time, my B team was the Cubs. I loved the Cubs because I loved the plight. I loved the curse. I loved the history of the Chicago Cubs. So it was just so cool to me, and it was like, is there really a curse? What's going on with the Cubs? They could never seem to do it. And when they finally won the World Series, something snapped, and all of a sudden, the Cubs weren't my backup team anymore because I feel like I was able to let them go. It's like letting go of a loved one that passed away or a pet that passed away or something. It's like I felt like I was able to let the Cubs go. And now my new team is the Angels because I just, I want to see Mike Trout do well. I think Mike Trout deserves a World Series title.
Local boy
From Millville. Yeah.
Speaking of local, really quickly, my B team that you mentioned it, Mr. Swanson, and going back to my childhood, I had the privilege and the honor of like meeting or at least getting autographs from the Eagles players. When I'm talking about Reggie White, Clyde Simmons, Jerome Brown before he
I was going to say Jerome Brown.
Jerome Brown, 99, Mike Golick, Byron Evans, all the Keith Byers, Keith Jackson, like Calvin Williams, Freddie Barnett, Andre Waters, like that whole Eagles team. So they've always been my B team. And when you guys made your run and went to the Super Bowl,
cool.
Best believe I was on your side. And Chef,
you were. I was there with you. I 100%. Remember.
And Chef Eli, when Eli beat Tom Brady, my rival, 2 times, best believe I was a Giants fan. So I appreciate the comeback, and I appreciate the love because you got to have common enemies. Man. The enemy of your enemy, is my enemy, or the
my enemy. Yeah.
I love that. All is fair in love and war.
Let's go. And football's a war.
It is definitely a war, and we've been in a fantasy battle for the past 6 weeks. We're moving into week 7, and the LA Chargers don't have Austin Eckler, and we just got more news stating that he's not going to be back until at least another 4 weeks. We could say that.
Maybe. Yeah, it's starting to look iffy. Like we thought 3-4 weeks was the positive prognosis, like the best one, best case scenario. And now we're learning that it might be 6 weeks. And they might have their bye. They had the forced bye.
Out. Yeah.
Originally they had the week 10 bye. And there was the fear
right.
that he would come back after that bye, but now
they just had their bye. Right. It got switched up, and that was lucky for them.
The forced bye.
But then they come back, and it's going to be tough sledding for a while. But if you listen to the waiver wire hero sheet and picked up Justin Jackson, you're going to be okay. Just trust in it.
By now, you might have Kelly and Jackson, and you can make that decision week to week as to who's going to get the carries and who's going to
depending on positive or negative game script. Yes,
that's a tough decision to make. I hope you don't have that decision.
I do have that decision in a couple leagues. I'm playing that roulette.
Boy. That's tough.
And I'm playing it in a league that I don't have Austin Eckler. I have Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly.
You should probably flip one of those to the Eckler on.
I would go with Justin Jackson for the time being, but
I am. We'll absolutely.
Yeah, I would
get to that into the show.
What else we got? Deontay
Johnson practiced fully today. He was dealing with a back injury. He's building an injury industry. That's what he's doing. He's been injured about 3 times now this season, and it's hard to hit or miss on him. It's a little
Does Chase Claypool disrupt the value of Deontay Johnson?
I say no, and I say no because James Washington is the one that will suffer in the long run. Listen,
of course,
the success that Deontay Johnson was having early on in the season is undisputable. Like he was absolutely dynamic. All of the metrics show you that he could be a mini Antonio Brown. Yeah, him being out first, it was the turf toe injury, and that took him out. But then it was a random concussion and a random back injury, completely unrelated. The time being out now gave him time to heal up that toe and probably get right and somewhere close back to 100%. With that offense clicking the way it is now, and you seeing it start to move, and a little foreshadowing, we're going to talk about James Conner in a little while when we do our going forward segment. Like I feel like Deontay Johnson slides right back into where he was, and the one that suffers is James Washington, as he may not be the third anymore. It might be Claypool as the third, and James Washington falls to the fourth.
I think having Johnson go out, all of a sudden Roethlisberger unlocked like cheat codes, like new character unlocked. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Claypool. All right, no problem. So it'd be interesting to see what happens going forward with it.
I also think that it affects Juju Smith-Schuster's value as well, but that's a story.
That's for another value for sure.
Yeah.
Who Smith-Schuster?
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been. I should have sent that to the footballers. The fantasy footballers do a great job. Shout out to them. On Mondays, they do a Monday Punday.
Yes.
And puns are like right up my alley. I love stupid stuff like that. I can come up with them all the time. All three of us do. And I keep forgetting to send them something silly.
Well,
But
I lost that momentum in the beginning of the season with the Ozama Zama Zama.
That was tough, man. That was tough to watch.
Oh man,
right
it just stinked.
But speaking of the Bengals,
I was just gonna say,
yeah, Joe Mixon absent from practice today with a foot injury. I believe he established that injury in the second quarter of the game this past week. We saw him come back and play in the third quarter, but keep an eye out for Giovanni Bernard going forward. If Mixon were to miss, he would be the guy, and he would have all the opportunity in the world to have a great game.
Unbelievable how still Giovanni Bernard is a fantasy relevant name, especially every time that something happens to Mixon and he's nicked up in any way, and he's been getting involvement in the passing game, and it's just Giovanni Bernard never goes away. He's eternal. He's like Frank Gore. Like they're going to be around forever.
Yeah, he is. He's like Frank Gore or AP, or I mean AP's. He's on a different level.
But still, AP's I mean, he's a cyborg and all that, but he's still, fantasy relevant, and the guy just sticks around. Look at Greg Olsen and Jason Witten have been playing football this year, and Jason Witten just gets one catch for 2 yards, but Olsen's had a couple games.
Yeah, Olsen got into the end zone already.
Yeah, so I mean,
so is Witten, I believe.
It's a testament to these guys staying in shape and staying, fantasy relevant. And Greg
speaking
Olsen
of tight ends,
speaking of, been a great tight end for a long time. But speaking of tight ends,
hey, alley-oop, Jonnu Smith. With that ankle injury, limited in practice today, but
encouraging.
Is he a go-on? Do you think he's going to play this week, or do we see another week of the blowout of Anthony Firkser?
Firkser scares me a little bit because we saw last game that Jonnu started the game, was in there for a minute, and then he went out and stayed out. So I'm afraid if he tries to tough it out and make it through this game and they announce him as questionable, but he plays and then he doesn't really get the looks, like that scares me a little bit. But I think I have to take a chance with the way the tight end matchups are this week. If I don't have another viable option, somebody else that I can replace Jonnu Smith with, I have to play Jonnu and trust the fact that he's going to go back to being the tight end 2 that he was going into last week.
Do you trust Jonnu Smith or Dalton Schultz?
Nah,
against the Redskins.
Yeah, no, if I have an option like Schultz as my backup or Robert Tonyan as my backup, then depending on his injury as well. But I would rather... I'd rather go the safe route and go somebody else if I can. If it's a viable option like that can give me upside. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's interesting to see. And Mr. Swanson, you're pretty spooky over there, man. It's like Halloween. I had this whole Halloween themed show for next week cooking in my head, and you prematurely
he's there already
opened it up.
He's there.
That's because I've been dead for years.
I
can always do this again next week and turn the lights back off.
Yeah, well, one thing that's scary to hear, and this scary piece of news hit all across social media today. Teams are interested in Antonio Brown coming back to the NFL. His suspension is over in week 8. Seattle is one of those candidates to
wait a second
show interest in Antonio Brown.
Beetlejuice,
you know who else Seattle was?
He's here. He's here.
So my main question is, and I know I'm going to get a great response from it. What happens to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett if Antonio Brown slides into that wide receiver 3 spot in that David Moore spot?
Nothing, because he won't
in
go to
Seattle.
Because he won't go to Seattle.
He
will not. He's not going to Seattle. Nope. I'm just saying.
Are you wishing that into existence?
I don't. I'm
they've
trying
shown
to.
interest twice. They showed interest in the offseason, and now in week 7, it resurfaces.
Didn't they also have what's his name? I can't think of his name right now.
They were looking at Josh Gordon as well.
That's what I'm saying, Josh Gordon. So like the Seattle Seahawks are not the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't have to keep taking these guys with arrest records and all this, all the terrible baggage that they're bringing to a team. The Seahawks are fine right now. Russell Wilson is having an MVP season. Everything is clicking on the Seahawks. They do not need Antonio Brown. Nobody needs Antonio Brown. You know where you can send Antonio Brown? New York. Send him to the Jets, not the Giants. Send him to the Jets.
I appreciate that, but I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Listen,
I like my Mims shares where they are.
The Jets are not a player in the Antonio Brown sweepstakes because they're not a competitor.
No, I know they're not.
You're not going to like this, but there are two teams that need Antonio Brown.
What about Kansas City?
No, even if just not to let him go to Seattle. Your Kansas City take Sammy Watkins is coming back. They just added Le'Veon Bell. They don't really need him. They can make it work without Antonio Brown. They don't really need that. They already did.
What about the Patriots?
No, it's the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. Because if you're going to be in the NFC and you're going to make some kind of a run, you really, really need a receiver right now. If you're the Eagles,
he won't go to Green Bay.
And listen, after that showing last week, you need to appease Aaron Rodgers. Him and Devontae Adams have something going on where he's not as effective when just Devontae Adams is out there on the field, and he doesn't look really good. And he needed to be appeased after the draft and them taking Jordan Love, moving up to take Love. They need to appease him, and adding Antonio Brown for a playoff push would not only help him, but it would also deter the Seattle Seahawks from making a move and getting him. And that's their competition right now. They're both have really good records. They're going to win their divisions, and they're going to see each other in the playoffs. So even if it's not for yourself to block him from going to another team, Antonio Brown makes sense for either the Seahawks or the Packers. And if you're the Eagles right now, dude, I love Travis Fulgham. I love the story. The story's been absolutely fantastic. Everything he's been doing. You don't know about Alshon Jeffrey, and you don't know about Deshaun Jackson. And if you can add Antonio Brown and give Wentz some kind of reprieve, that would be an ideal move.
How long do you think it's going to be before Wentz becomes Hurts? But anyway, I see what you're saying.
That's a story for another day.
That's a story for another day.
That division's out of reach.
I agree. But I never thought about that going to the Eagles. I think because I just don't want it, because I don't want any negative energy. There's too much of it already. And I really believe, I know it sounds stupid, but negative energy really does play a part. You can be one guy who can just mess up the entire vibe of a clubhouse. And then all of a sudden you're not playing right things. I don't know. I believe in that.
Do they get rid of Doug Peterson in Philly?
You need a spark. Before that happens, before what the chef just said happens.
It's going down the drain over there, right? And Peterson will have to take the fall for it.
So if you're desperate,
I think it's Peterson before Wentz.
No, we don't get rid of Doug Peterson until Doug Peterson starts to fail with a healthy team. Our entire team is in the hospital.
The fan base speaks highly of it.
They're already calling for Peterson's head in the fan base, and they're calling for Wentz's job too.
Because it's Philly, and everybody's calling for Wentz's job. And listen, I know. I see a lot of things that I don't like from Wentz, but I also see a lot of things I do like. And I know that a lot of things that people don't like are out of his control.
Hey, listen,
I'm
not downgrading Peterson by any means. I like him as a coach. I like what he did when he made that Super Bowl run. He's a great, innovative coach. He's a team coach, but he's going to take the fall for this.
I think the injuries are enough of a scapegoat that if they can get a spark from somewhere, and maybe it's something like signing Antonio Brown, that might make. They've been in these games.
It makes sense.
They beat the Niners, and they've been in the game against Pittsburgh, and they were in the game last week against the Ravens. They have fight, and they're in it. Mm-hmm. The injuries are enough to make an excuse to say, "Listen, we're missing this," and what you're missing right now is a receiver that can completely separate and dominate and do something. Deshaun Jackson comes back healthy. You don't need Antonio Brown. Alshon Jeffrey comes back. Great. Ertz isn't injured. Great. Miles Sanders isn't injured. Great. But all of those things exist. So what can overcome them? Maybe it's Antonio Brown.
I like that.
Maybe
suspension. And I don't think it's the Wentz. I don't think it's Wentz's fault. Because Wentz is doing everything he can to get them even close.
Superhuman efforts the last couple of weeks, man.
Winning, running the ball like we haven't seen him run like that since his freshman year.
He's running.
Chelsea Hurts run. Chelsea Hurts doing his thing.
Hey, listen, Hurts can do the same thing. You're absolutely right. And
Hurts will be that Taysom Hill role before anything.
That's what he was doing. Did you see him?
It's going to be the point, though. What you're saying is coming to fruition.
Backwards to Wentz, and then Wentz passed it right back to him.
That is coming, though. The Hurts excitement, you need that spark. So they're looking for it by implementing a little bit of Hurts. Whether or not that continues or you find an outside spark, that's where I leave a little bit of wiggle room for maybe.
I could see it happening. I could see that happening.
Well, there's options on both sides of that take, with the Peterson side and the Wentz side, and that brings me to our newest segment of the show. We haven't done this one live yet. It was only a demo, and we're gonna resurrect this for you, we're gonna put in our newest segment, and it is called Tilt the Scales.
It's time to tilt those scales. No.
Okay, so I took pride in this one, and I dug deep for you guys to look at some players that are neck and neck through 6 games of production or equal games of production.
Games, yeah.
We're not going to name. We'll only note the ones that have like 3
But
games.
Either way,
and there's a couple
through 6 weeks.
between injury through 6 weeks, injuries, buys. They all have the same. They're ranked very similar, with the same amount of production, maybe some decimal points off in some scenarios. And we're going to go through some of these players, positionally, and see who we like better going forward for the rest of the season.
I love it. Yeah, welcome back segment.
Yeah,
I missed you.
This is the tilde scale segment right here that the chef created, and he put us up against the wall. Listen, it took me.
I might have. Yeah, I slammed it pretty hard.
He broke my brain because it took me like 6 to 8 hours to be able to try to figure out. No, seriously, these are so tough that they really make you decide. Like, you have to go 7, 8, 9 different stats in to try to find a difference between some of these guys,
and they're still so close.
And you're in a position where some of these guys are on your roster, or someone's trying to trade you for one of these guys using the other one, and they are so neck and neck that it's going to take special numbers and special stats to be able to discern the difference between the two.
It's going to take the fantasy gods for you to make the right decision. In some of these cases right here,
it's a flip a coin kind of situation.
And we're going to get off with the first one, because it's definitely a neck and neck conversation between Matt Ryan and Tom Brady. Tom Brady, QB 11 versus Matt Ryan, QB 12. Now, they both have had their wide receivers out.
Yep.
With Julio Jones. Calvin Ridley's been banged up as well.
Yep. And Godwin and Mike Evans.
And Godwin and Mike Evans both have injuries on both sides. Both are fighting through it. And we saw what they looked like without their wide receivers. But somehow they stand a mere, not even a full point ahead, 0.4 in fantasy point production ahead of one another. And I love this matchup. I wish I had both of these guys on my team going forward, because their schedules are so tight.
Yeah, both of them are going to have favorable matchups. They both play in that NFC South. They're both in shootout type game scripts. Both of them have a lot of production, and they have great weapons around them. Both have capable running backs in Ronald Jones and Todd Gurley. So it's a completely even matchup. And when you look at some of the stats, their deep attempts are only divided by 1. Brady has 32 and Matt Ryan has 31. They're neck and neck in virtually every single category. But if you had to make a decision, Chef, and you found yourself in the position where you own both of them, either through draft or through waiver, because they were both type late draft picks, and you might have taken both of them instead of reaching for a Mahomes or a Dak early in the year. If you have both of them, who do you want to be your guy going forward?
Now, the way I look at it here is, if you're going to put your stamp on a player for the rest of the season during week 7, you have to look at the playoff schedule, because you can stream in between there if need be, based off of your schedule. But those 3 to 4 weeks in the playoffs make my stamp. And with that, the Bucs playoff schedule, they have Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit.
Oof.
So those are all 3 good matchups, back and forth, shootouts.
Right.
Which we've seen most recently between Atlanta and Minnesota and Detroit with Jacksonville.
All susceptible defenses, Chef.
Yes.
And I made the same distinction, Chef, and I didn't look at the schedule to make mine. What I looked at was money throws. And Tom Brady, money throws, has 16 money throws where he's been completely on target, while Matt Ryan only has 8. So something along those lines makes me think, okay, Tom Brady has 70% completion percentage on play action. They've established a run with Ronald Jones. That offense is moving fluidly. And while Julio was out, you still had Ridley somewhat in there. When Mike Evans was banged up on that ankle, there was no Chris Godwin, and he was having to make
Calvin
moves.
Ridley.
Well,
there was 0.
The
Calvin
one game
Ridley.
against the Packers, Calvin Ridley had 5 targets and didn't have a single catch, but he was at least on the field, where Mike Evans was on the field and had 2 targets and was only 1 by the goal line, and there was it was Justin Watson and it was Tyler Johnson and it was Scotty Miller trying to fill that void, and you lost OJ Howard, and still Tom Brady kind of overcame that and they stayed relatively close. I think moving forward, that offense is in a different space and they're gelling. And the fact that Tom Brady is willing to throw the ball and his deep completion percentage is 5% higher than Matt Ryan's.
Oh, I had that too.
Yeah, 43.7 to 38.7. So like
Nice
it's a slightly higher completion percentage on those deep balls. And now with Godwin and Evans getting back healthy, I think the prospect is open. And like you said, Chef, a schedule like that at the end of the season, Tom Brady can win you a fantasy league, not just a week or a matchup, but the league by going on a run in the playoffs where it's historic and he throws 5 touchdowns like he did a couple weeks ago.
And the greatest part about this is they play each other in week 15. So either side in that game, it really shouldn't matter, but it does, because Tampa Bay's defense is a little bit better, and we've seen them come alive this past week in particular against Green Bay. And Matt Ryan has to face the Chargers, the Bucks, and then week 16, they play the Chiefs. The Super Bowl champion defense, Spagnuolo, is on a tear.
And they're going to need that win to secure home field advantage. There's only one
and
home
Atlanta
field this year.
Is not going to be able to hold up.
He might have a good game and produce a little bit, but the game before that against the Bucks, like you said, with that Bucks defense, I'll take Tom Brady in that matchup. So even if it's that close between these two quarterbacks, if you need to make the decision, it's Brady, even if it's by that game.
Yeah, and I'm with you right there.
Yeah,
right there all the way.
We're not going to agree all the way through this thing, Mr. Swanson, but at least for this one, we agree.
The first one we agreed on.
Yeah.
Our next, the two of y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all want to know what I think, or we just
absolutely?
Okay.
I'm taking notes.
Let's go.
I don't. You guys just did an amazing job, by the way, breaking all that down. But if I had to, just from the outside, like if I'm going to play the outside perspective from where you two like dove in on the analytics, the one thing I think of is the Atlanta defense is going to keep Matt Ryan on the field longer and from behind and have to make things happen. And I know that it hasn't really, you haven't really seen it the way you want to see it. You didn't draft Matt Ryan to be kind of where he is right now. I mean, he's holding it together. He's had a couple good weeks that have put him over that point, but I think that them playing from behind until they figure out that defense is something to think about for sure.
He did that last year.
So if it's that close,
They started off pretty poorly, and they had to do that. You're right. And the running game could be really effective for the Buccaneers, and Fournette could come into the fold. So there's an avenue for that to be an absolutely perfect take.
I like that.
Yeah.
We going to see.
It's so close. We are splitting hairs here, ladies and gentlemen. We are really splitting hairs.
We are trying to decide between two really, really tough matchups, and we're going to do this the whole show.
We got two more coming, too. Yep. Next two.
Go ahead. Lay it out for him.
Next two, QB 21 and QB 22. QB 21 being Big Ben Roethlisberger, putting up, and this is PPR, 92.8 fantasy points. QB 22, right behind him, is Drew Brees, putting up 92 points. Keep in mind, they've only played 5 games each. This is another tough one between 21 and 22. I'm going to throw it to Juan. Who you got?
All right. I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to go with Big Ben, Chef. And I'm taking Big Ben because of upside. I'm taking Big Ben because of being risk averse. I like the plethora of weapons versus the strength of the weapons. Yes, Michael Thomas and Kamara are probably the stronger weapons, but the emergence of Claypool, getting Deontay Johnson back, Juju still has something to prove. The offense is moving the ball. Now, Big Ben has only thrown 2 interceptable passes so far this season, while Drew Brees has thrown 9. Big Ben is slowly coming back from that injury and starting to throw the ball down the field a little bit more. And I believe in that offense going forward versus the offense of the Saints. And I think Big Ben gets it done the rest of the year. And if I had to pick between the two, which is a realistic possibility, especially given where they're ranked right now, I'll take Big Ben.
Pittsburgh's already had their bye too, so you're not going to lose any points from Ben.
And the Saints just did week 6 too. So they're
they did. Oh yeah, that's true. All right.
Yeah, we're ready.
Never mind.
These two guys are perfectly even the rest of the way.
Yeah, I beg to disagree that they're perfectly even throughout for the rest of the way. Yes, they play the same amount of games.
Right.
But they don't have the same amount of starters. And Michael Thomas, we just learned news today that he has an ankle injury. Well, maybe he got rushed out onto the field a little bit too early.
A hamstring too now.
Yeah.
On
Ankle,
top of the ankle.
hamstring.
Yeah.
Like, okay. He got rushed out there. He wasn't ready to do it, and he went full force. We're speculating here. I don't know exactly what's happened yet.
But it's bad news on Wednesday.
It's bad news
that he's supposed to start
and these
week.
quarterbacks aren't your starting quarterbacks this season. They are streaming quarterbacks. And if I'm going to take one to stream, I'm going to take him up against his good matchups, and that's Big Ben. I am taking Big Ben in this one. Like you said, you mentioned the turnovers.
Yep.
11 touchdowns to 1 interception compared to 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And the air yards alone are much better on the Ben Roethlisberger side, stretching the field a lot more. You see Breeze doing a lot more intermediate routes and dumping it off to Alvin Kamara, the focal point of the offense. You don't see that with James Conner. You don't see James Conner coming in with all these receiving yards this year. He's rushing the ball pretty well, and he's doing a good job. I'm not taking anything away from James Conner, but Ben Roethlisberger, he knows the way he wants to go out and finish his NFL career, and it's not dumping it down to the running back like Drew Brees has decided to do.
Yep.
It is throw the ball, and throw touchdowns and pad my stats for my walk into the Hall of Fame. And we see it firsthand. Even with receivers out, Deontay Johnson being out. James Washington was injured as well. Claypool stepped up. He's like, oh, okay. Ebron stepped up. Oh, here you go. And then, and Juju's there solidifying that threshold, holding down the slot spot. He loves his wide receivers. He's going to continue to throw to his wide receivers, and you're going to see better fantasy production because of it.
I agree with that one. So that's 2 for 2. We agreed on the quarterbacks 2 for 2 that Ben and Brady will have better seasons than Ryan and Breeze, respectively.
Sorry, I went on a little rant there.
Hey,
no, that was perfect. I agree. Steelers play the Colts week 15. Browns week 16. I'm just looking at something here.
Yeah, I didn't even go into their schedules, but
yeah but slight increases for
defenses changed. Yeah, I'm not.
You don't want Drew Brees in week 14 up against the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs in week 15. You don't want that.
I just don't want him because the yards per attempt are so low, and the fact that he's not throwing the ball down the field, and until he gets Michael Thomas,
because a lot of that's going to Kamara, though.
Right. So we don't know when Michael Thomas is actually going to come back to help him increase the yards after catch, extending the plays, third down conversions. Like there's a bunch of things that will be impacted by Michael Thomas's return, but he still, even with Michael Thomas, doesn't have the emergence of Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Eric Ebron. Like the weapons that are available to Big Ben are better than the weapons that are available to Drew Brees at this point.
100%. Do any of you guys? No, none of you guys would have Michael Thomas because none of us drafted wide receivers in the first.
I have Michael Thomas in a couple best ball leagues, and I'm losing in all those leagues.
I have 0 shares of Michael Thomas.
I have 0 shares.
I had to have one or two just in case it happened.
I went straight running back, so yes.
Speaking of running backs,
you didn't expect that.
Speaking of running
backs, we're going to move right on to our running back portion of Tilt the Scales, and we're going to kick it off with our running back 3 versus our running back 5. Number 3 is Aaron Jones, sitting there with 115 fantasy points versus Derrick Henry at running back 5 with 111.2. I'm going to kick this one right off to Chef. RB3 Aaron Jones or RB5 Derrick Henry? Who you got? Because I already know who I got.
Both are close in fantasy points per game. Aaron Jones leading
one game,
23 versus the 22.
Aaron Jones has already had. I'm sorry, Aaron Jones has already had a bye. Derrick Henry had one amazing blowout game for over 200 yards.
Recently,
he had the bye too.
They both had a bye.
Yeah,
they both have had the bye because
whatever.
The fourth
I don't
bye.
care about
nobody knows the buys anymore.
I can say all types of things.
There's been forced buys.
Low, good morning, forced buy, whatever.
We'll just put it like this:
they both have buys, and they both have 11 games.
I'll put it like this: both have had at least one huge game. Okay, and if we have to go off of that one huge game, then it would be Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry, he's a freak of nature. We're getting towards Halloween. He's pretty freaking spooky.
Super freak.
For a man that size to go 21 miles per hour down the field
not fair.
is
not fair.
It's bananas. It really is.
You think it's because of bananas that he goes 21 miles an hour?
It's like a banana in the tailpipe, man. He just goes right through it.
God. It keeps coming back.
It never goes away, the banana.
Where did we hear that?
It was off of like week 1. We heard it off of one of the commentating NFL or NFL commentators.
Right.
But to get to my point, Aaron Jones, he had that one good game against Detroit. He had another decent game against Atlanta. He's holding his floor very well, and his floor is pretty high. It's in the 16 to 17 point fantasy range, and that's what you want. He's sitting as the RB3 in PPR formats. He's doing everything you want. But I think as they move along the schedule, he's going to see Indianapolis, he's going to see Chicago, he's going to see Philadelphia between weeks 11 and 13. And then Carolina in week 15. There's going to be some time to falter.
Are you talking about Aaron Jones?
Yeah. I am talking about Aaron Jones here.
So you're talking about
Aaron Jones? You talking about Aaron Jones?
So you're taking Henry?
I am taking Henry. And I'm taking Henry because he has nobody else besides Jeremy McNichols and a banged up Darrington Evans on IR or injured or healthy scratch. We don't even know about Darrington Evans anymore. To take his job. But Aaron Jones has A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams both getting touches in the backfield. And that takes away from that solid floor production.
Yeah, I agree that those guys pose a little bit of a threat. The only reason that I take Aaron Jones ahead of Derrick Henry is, first of all, the next couple of weeks he's got Houston and Minnesota in back-to-back weeks. But he's been getting 5.6 targets and 3.6 catches per game. And that involvement in the passing game, and you've seen him be split out in the slot, out wide, running actual deep wide receiver routes. It's only a matter of time before one of those hits. And it's not like he's one of those running backs that's only getting, 50, 60 yards rushing. He's averaging 77.8 yards rushing on 15 carries. So he's getting enough of the passing work to be an RB2 no matter what happens.
Right.
With 5.6 targets that would lead you to think that he's going to add enough value to become a solid wide running back 1 for the rest of the season. And that schedule, if you have to play Detroit and Minnesota a couple more times, I'll put the Chicago game to the side and take my chances with those boom games that Aaron Jones is going to win you weeks. Again, we are completely splitting hairs, and it's a matter of you choosing which one you like.
Oh, neither of us are wrong.
If you look at the schedule
on which side we take.
For Derrick Henry, he plays the Bengals, the Bears, the Colts, the Ravens, the Colts again.
Yeah. Those are tough games. You play in Pittsburgh once, the Colts twice, you're playing the Bears. Like, those are tough games that you may not that you can never sit either one of these guys. You have to start them because of where you drafted them, because of the production, everything else. But you want to temper expectations in a lot of these games that Derrick Henry has going down the stretch, where Aaron Jones, even if it's a negative matchup and he has to play the Bears, he's going to get the involvement in the passing game to be able to sustain an RB2 type production where you don't fall completely off the grid. So that for that reason, and very, very closely, and for that alone, I'll take Aaron Jones.
Okay. So 2 for Jones, 1 for Henry.
I told you all these matchups busted my head open. We had to dig so deep.
And I was not a fan of either of these guys going into the season.
Yeah, I faded them both.
Juan, bring your mic up a little closer to your mouth.
Okay.
Or maybe like a little higher up. You're talking on the top of it.
Okay.
Oh my boot. Yeah, it is.
It
sounds so warm. Smooth.
I didn't want to bury what y'all to death. I mean,
Well, we talking about not, man. We love that. We love that smooth jazz. Give it to me. Give it a smooth jazz.
You want to talk about smooth jazz? I got this jersey on, and we're going to smooth transition right into another boy down there in Miami playing running back, and Myles Gaskin.
Let's talk about it.
You know what
Let's
I mean?
talk about Myles Gaskin.
Myles Gaskin, who's an up-and-comer, a new face on the fantasy wire, another guy that nobody would have thought of at the beginning of the season that would be this involved and have this much of an involvement in an offense. But it's Myles Gaskin versus a staple, a mainstay in the fantasy landscape, James Conner.
And 16 and 17.
Closely.
That's where we're at. Myles
Again,
Gaskin,
the chef
16.
put it to where like it's flipping a coin on each one of these guys.
Yeah, I think I screwed myself on some of these, man.
Well,
because they were tough.
The tilt is real, and this is
what you want to do.
Exercise where we're actually tilting because the scales.
I was tilting when I was doing my analysis on this.
It's crazy. It's very
so
possible.
If you were involving these guys in a trade
and James Conner, you got to make a decision.
Right. So like Mr. Swanson said, either this is a place where these guys might be your RB2, RB3, and you don't know which one to start, or somebody's making you an offer and they want one of these guys for the other. So if you had to choose between Gaskin and Connor, who would you take?
It's Gaskin for me.
Okay.
And the QB change, I think, helps Gaskin.
Does it?
With the news of Tua? Yes. Tua's going to be running that RPO system in Miami like he did when he was at Alabama. And if he does that, everybody is going to eat on that offense who is on the field. And Gaskin has been on the field. They've taken Jordan Howard away.
Completely.
Matt Breida gets maybe 8 to 9 touches a game, and he's a replacement back. He always has been. He can do it when he needs to, but they're not going to rely on him to do anything while Myles Gaskin is tearing it up. I mean, he's ranked 4th in receptions with 27 receptions. He's ranked 5th in yardage for 182 yards. James Conner's not going to do that for you. He's ranked 27th with 12 receptions and 33rd in yardage for 83 yards. Like that can't, it doesn't compute. And if we just turn around and said Ben Roethlisberger wants to throw the ball deeper, and he's getting these pieces back on offense,
I was just gonna say
it's going to be a throw team.
Yep.
More so than the run the ball team. And there's
100%.
more running backs on Pittsburgh that I'm worried about with Benny Snell, because we've seen him come in and do it already once this season.
Yards against the Giants, in Connor's absence,
And he also has Anthony McFarland biting at his ankles. One slip, and he's more injury prone. He's older. Myles Gaskin, fresh. He's doing the great thing. He's down. He's on the field in all 3 downs. It's Myles Gaskin for me going forward. He deserves to be at least running back 14 in my books compared to the 16 that he has.
Right. This one was really tough for me, Chef, because it's a home pick for me. Like, you know what I mean? I love Gaskin. I love the story. I love what's been happening. I am a little bit scared that the superior athlete to Myles Gaskin is Matt Breida, and the RPO expects a lot of zone stretch plays and plays that are to the outside and tosses and maybe even some option plays where you need the speed of Breida to make an impact. So his involvement scares me a little tiny bit there. You're absolutely right about the pass catching ability and the difference between Gaskin and Connor. Connor's not utilized in the passing game whatsoever, but he does have that floor of like 15 carries, 73.8 yards per game where they're going to keep giving him the ball. And I haven't seen we've only seen one play of over 15 yards, one carry for 15 yards from Gaskin. So that burst is lacking. I feel like that is something that Connor has. He has 3 of those such plays. So I like Connor for that. It's situational. If I were on a team where I can make Connor my every week number 2, I would feel safer about that than chasing points with Gaskin as my number 2. So it's a splitting hairs decision. And I love the fact that Connor coming up has Tennessee, a bad game against Baltimore, but then Dallas, who we just saw Drake completely gash. So in the interim, in the like short term, because of the bye week coming up for the Dolphins and then the Chargers after that, I would take Connor for the time being, but I would really have to debate long and strong about a trade between those 2 players or who to pick
during that time frame after the next 2 weeks.
After those nice couple matchups, like I would have a really hard time discerning between the 2. And that's what made this so hard. You came up with this list, dude. I'm telling you.
It's tough.
Yeah, tough. It's tough. For me,
stuck in a submarine.
Connor by a smidge.
Stuck in a submarine right now, drinking torpedoes.
Torpedoed by a submarine. I love it.
Torpedo bearing in the water. Bearing. 3.
So we just
3.
So we just meant I just mentioned that that Dallas defense is porous and they gave up a lot, and you came up with this matchup. And honestly, last week I had a really bad take on Kenyan Drake, and I really thought Kenyan Drake was washed up, done kind of, and Chase Edmonds was going to be the guy and all that. But we saw him break out completely for $161 against the Dallas Cowboys, and he looked like Kenyan Drake of late last year when he first came over to the Cardinals, and it looked absolutely right. And you paired him up against David Johnson. And initially, even with that thought about Drake, I still would have been.
I didn't pair him up. The rankings paired them up.
Right. But I mean, you chose those 2 out of the rankings. You could have picked numbers, 23 and 24 instead of numbers 20 and 21. Yeah. Like you could have gone differently.
But their numbers were too close to miss.
Right. But like, I would have thought, no way, David Johnson's close to Kenyan Drake. Like, obviously, I'll take Kenyan Drake over. But when you look closer at the numbers, it's really, really close between these two.
Yeah, I don't like either of these guys going forward. Just to be clear, I'd be in some leagues where I'm losing and I'm 1-5. It's because of injury, and I'd be happy to have either one of these players on my team just because I'm starting Josh Kelly and Zach Moss in a league.
CMC, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler can make you wish you had these two.
Yeah, and exactly. That is what I am trying to say. But yeah,
2020 strikes again.
But both have challenging schedules down the stretch. David Johnson plays Indy in weeks 13 and 15. And during those weeks, Drake's playing the Rams in Philadelphia.
Still,
so I guess if I had to take one, I think it would be Drake because he is the starter. And I think that the Houston Texans are going to have to throw the ball down the field to compete. It's just because their defense is not that good. And what we saw out of Kenyan Drake, and I'm not taking anything away from him. He had that 67-yard run, 64-yard run, 67-yard run,
something along those lines
on Monday night. But he did it against Dallas, and we all know that Dallas is a depleted team, not just offense or defense team
in general. Yeah.
Yes. They are a part of the NFC least, and teams are going to do that to the Dallas Cowboys.
Dearness Johnson ran for 97 yards on them. They gave up 300 to the Cleveland Browns. Yeah.
Exactly. So I will stay with Drake on this one for the hope that he gets into the end zone on a weekly basis kind of thing, and maybe gets 40 yards on 50 carries. 40 yards on 15 carries on a weekly basis. If he has 3.5 yards per carry, okay, because that's what he's really been doing for the first part of the season.
With the exception of this game that skews the stats in his favor, like he really isn't averaging 79.7 yards per game. It's just that he had 164 in a game this week, or 161 in a game.
I should have taken the stats out of week 6 and then did the percentage. Like going into week 6, it would have been a totally different story. David Johnson would have been towering over Kenyan Drake.
Right. But, you have to do it in real time, and you have to do it as of right now. And even though he had that burst run, it's still a number and it still counts. And he has one more burst run than David Johnson. And though he hasn't had any involvement in the passing game, he has shown the passing skills. And if I'm going to take an offense, I guess I'll take his involvement in the Cardinals offense versus the come from behind nature of what you said with the Houston Texans.
Right.
Like, it just doesn't feel good. Like, I know he catches balls, but so does Duke Johnson. So I don't expect the Cardinals to be in negative game scripts all the time, like I do with the Houston Texans.
And Cornell said it himself that he wants to get Duke Johnson more involved in the offense. Just Duke's been a little banged up. And I think you're going to see more of a 1-2 punch going down the stretch for the Houston Texans.
And in the next couple of weeks, Drake has Seattle, who's been susceptible to the run. And then 2 weeks after, they play the Buffalo Bills, who Darrell Henderson hit him for 114. And then he saw 164 out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the Buffalo Bills are susceptible to the run, and Kenyan Drake could end up having a really good game against them.
Oh, I hope you're wrong about that. I hope Chase Edmonds just blows it all up.
We'll see.
That'll make my old article
after
my preseason article just shine.
That's another fact.
We're wrong.
Chase Edmonds. I was going to say that too. I don't like Johnson's schedule going forward at all.
Nah, yeah,
it's ugly.
This is probably the easiest one out of all of them, and that is Kenyan Drake by a wide margin. Speaking of things that are wide,
let's go wide. Yes, sir.
We are going right now. Wide receiver back-to-back matchup right here, and it is wide receiver 4 versus wide receiver 5. The 4 being Stephon Diggs with 155.5 fantasy points so far, versus wide receiver 5 Amari Cooper with 110.1. Oh boy, man,
it's tough.
A lot of this has changed. What do you guys? Who wants to go first?
Can I apologize before you go, Chef?
Absolutely.
I want to apologize for my preseason takes as of this point right now, because I had Amari Cooper somewhere in the low teens or in the teens. I did have him as a high-end wide receiver too, but I had Diggs in the 20s, and I didn't foresee this happening. I didn't foresee him being 4 and 5. So kind of I'm apologizing to Stephon Diggs, even though he may never hear this. But if you hear this, Stephon Diggs, I apologize. I had you ranked down number 26. I didn't believe in the growth of Josh Allen. I didn't think it was going to get to this point. I didn't think you and Amari Cooper would be even in deep targets. You would have a 27.6% target share. I just didn't see that coming. You've caught 86% of the catchable passes thrown your way. And for that, I'm sorry, you're averaging 92 yards a game receiving, and hats off to Stephon Diggs and the performance that he's had so far this year.
I mean, it all goes to Josh Allen's completion percentage, really. He's rocking it crazy right now with a 75.9 completion percentage. Last year, we saw that number end in 58%.
Yeah, it's a crazy jump. It's a leap that nobody would have expected.
Yeah, I think they got the piece that they needed in Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
And unfortunately, John Brown's not holding it together pretty well. That sickle cell's starting to tickle his cell. And that's just it's the truth. Thank God they have Gabriel Davis to fit in that hole. But you're seeing that full package of Josh Allen. I'm with Diggs on this one.
Yep,
just because I will never, ever, ever take Amari Cooper. I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it 20 other times. I will not take Amari Cooper. But it's just strictly based off of production. I don't like Amari Cooper's production going down the road with Andy Dalton.
I was just going to say, did you think it has anything to do with the fact that Prescott, his ankle went?
Well, I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, if we look at Amari Cooper's production, it really did. It went up from the Giants game drastically. I mean, he only scored 4.1 fantasy points against the Giants, and then he had a 20.9 fantasy points
not a lot to go
up against Arizona. But
Garbage
he didn't.
Time.
Yeah, it was pretty much them shooting for the fences and Michael Gallup dropping a bunch of passes. Like those extra passes to Amari Cooper shouldn't have been had, in my opinion.
I was gonna go with you, Chef, and I was gonna go at the beginning, I was going to go with Amari Cooper because Amari Cooper's averaging 0.7 more catches per game. He's averaging a full target more per game than Stephon Diggs.
His numbers look better.
But it was because his team was throwing the ball 50 times while Stephon Diggs' team was throwing the ball 37 times. Those 13 extra attempts while Dak was in there were making the difference. And I agree with you. You've turned my opinion the other way. And this is how close these things are all the way up until this moment. I thought that the advantage and all that was on Cooper's side, but that was just the empirical data that we have up until this point. Going forward, it's going to be a different game script, and I believe that the Buffalo Bills will throw the ball about the same as the Cowboys, because if the Cowboys are going to get right, they're going to have to run the ball, and then Andy Dalton's going to have to throw it to Schultz and throw it to CeeDee Lamb.
Yes, you said it. Yes.
And the targets are going to come down for Amari Cooper. So the volume will outweigh the production that Diggs has, and Diggs will win.
Right. Not to mention that Cooper's schedule in weeks 13 through 16, Baltimore, Cincinnati, San Francisco, and Philadelphia.
And then us.
He's going to get the shadow coverage. He's been getting the shadow coverage.
Yeah, and he's going to get the Slade treatment last week of the game. Yeah, I'll go with Diggs. Wow, these are so close.
It's so close, and I hate to say it because I was against Diggs in the beginning of the season as well. I had him way down there. Yeah. I think I had him at wide receiver 30.
I had him 26. Yeah.
So, yeah, I apologize, Stephon Diggs. I mean, I used to like you in Minnesota, and I know Mr. John Swanson is happy with this because he held on to him in our dynasty.
Good hold.
Good hold.
Thank you.
Even though we touted in the other direction against him. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I've always liked me some Stephon Diggs. I always thought that Stephon Diggs was targeted in Minnesota because Thielen was covered. So I wanted to see Stephon Diggs get a situation where he could eat a little more. And that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, he's developed. He's a true one now.
He's developed.
He won't fall off from one.
He is. He is for sure. All right, you want to jump on to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to jump up 20 spots. We're going to go wide receiver 22 versus wide receiver 23. 22 is DJ Moore for the Carolina Panthers with 80.4 fantasy points, or wide receiver 23. Cooper Kupp.
That's really good.
All right, DJ Moore with 80 points. Cooper Kupp with 80 points. It's a 0.3 difference at 22 and 23. Who you got going forward? Because, yikes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
This is another one. Like both of these guys I had in the top 15. I thought they would both be top 15 wide receivers. They would both be fringe wide receiver ones. I did not see the Robbie Anderson emergence the way that it has happened. I did not see that coming to fruition. And I also didn't see Kupp and Robert Woods being a little bit lower than expected, and that offense kind of not hitting its stride. So going forward, if I had to pick one out of the two, I would probably pick DJ Moore. I like the fact that he's got more yards to this point. He has 9 deep targets compared to 4 for Cooper Kupp. And he has a little bit more yards per carry, yards after the catch. Actually, Cooper Kupp has more yards after the catch. And they're right even.
They are so even.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with Moore no matter what because of the deep targets, the yards, and the share is exactly the same. His team throws the ball a little bit more. The Carolina Panthers throw the ball more than the Rams, believe it or not. So because of that alone, I'm going to go with DJ Moore. But these guys are exactly close, man. The only big difference is 9 deep targets for DJ Moore to 4 for Cooper Kupp. Everything else is pretty even.
Yeah, pretty even, I guess. You have to look at the quarterbacks in this one.
Okay.
You have to look at the fact that Jared Goff, his favorite target is Cooper Kupp. And Robbie Anderson taking over in that number 1 spot, and we'll call it that. I will.
Yeah,
I
have to.
I've loved DJ Moore, and you know this.
Yep.
I love DJ Moore. I had him in a keeper league for years and years. I loved him coming out of college, out of Maryland, and I love him in the NFL, and I love him as a Carolina Panther in this offense. But he is not the number 1 wide receiver.
It's Robbie Anderson.
It's Robbie Anderson going forward. He is that field stretcher. He can play in the slot. He can do it all. DJ Moore, he's a great football player, and I think the Carolina Panthers have turned a new leaf with that Joe Brady offense that you talk so highly of.
I love it. There's still room for all of that to change or move around a little bit.
It'll evolve even more than
Right.
what it is. Where this is only year 1.
Right.
I think my man signed a 5-year deal.
They're going to be around, yeah.
But I like Cooper Kupp here. He is his target. You saw even in games that they struggle against, and you'll see it again this week against the Chicago Bears, Cooper Kupp will be targeted more than anybody else on that team. He looks for him to get in the end zone via the slot. Because the tight ends, when they're going up against tough defenses, the tight ends stay a little bit closer. They block a little bit more, and they will be blocking up against the Chicago Bears this week.
Khalil Mack, yeah.
Not for nothing. Coop plays the Jets week 15 and Seattle.
And you stole 16. My closer.
My
bad. Great matchups at the end.
Compared to DJ Moore facing Green Bay and Washington.
Yes.
So, yes, and you're absolutely right, Mr. Swanson. He plays the Jets and Seattle in weeks 15 and 16. You want a piece of those strong offenses moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
And this is my reason, and like we 0.3 difference right now, but look how many balls Cooper Kupp has dropped, especially in the most recent game. He dropped, I think, let me see real fast. I have to look it up because it's really
spooky.
He dropped 6 balls.
See. That's bad.
You
don't expect that.
He only had 3 receptions on 9 targets.
That's hella disappointing.
But the game before that, he had 5 receptions on 8 targets. As long as he keeps getting those high targets, I mean, he's had 4 games over 7 targets. 7 targets or over. You want those targets. And as long as he's getting those targets compared to the DJ Moore targets, competing for targets with Robbie Anderson, I'm taking Cooper Kupp in this one. I didn't like it. I wanted it to be a DJ Moore, but that's what tilts the scale for me.
Yeah, when you do these dives is when you find out the truth. Like you have a preconceived notion, you have a premonition, you have an idea of what you want to do and what you want to go. And you're like, wait a minute, let me do a deeper dive. And then you see something like that. And I would be willing to tilt the scales the other way.
They're neck and neck.
And
they
go
are
with
neck and
Cooper
neck.
Kupp. No coincidence that they're that close.
Next question.
Let's go to our third wide receiver matchup. We are in the mid-century here, folks. We're driving a light blue, beautiful Cadillac down the street. We are in the 50s. This is wide receiver 50, starting with A.J. Brown.
Ooh.
Currently, these guys have only played 3 games each, so keep that in mind. So A.J. Brown sitting there with 52.7 fantasy points versus wide receiver 54, Kenny Golladay, with 48.4 fantasy points. And again, each have only played 3 games. And that's why, because
that's why they're ranked so low right now.
Because
these guys are the guys you want to target right now. I mean, AJ Brown just blew up 2 weeks in a row.
Back 1 second.
But Kenny Golladay, he really hasn't had that blow up game. He's just been consistent. His ceiling is very nice, but I think we're seeing his ceiling. Are we seeing his ceiling?
No, I don't think we're even scratching at it. Yeah, I don't think we're even scratching at the ceiling of Kenny Golladay. Like, Kenny Golladay last year was a league winner. He had 9 games last year where he kind of won you the game. He had either like 90 or 100 yards receiving in 9 games. He had a huge amount. He had 11 touchdowns last season.
Mm-hmm.
And then so far this year, he's already averaging 15 more yards per game than A.J. Brown. So the yardage is already there. The depth of target is already there. And while Brown gets 1 more catch than he does, the deep throws are 4-1 in favor of Golladay. And that's just through a small 3-game sample. Both of these guys were guys that people were projecting anywhere from number 5 to number 20. Like they were both in that wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 conversation to start the season. But when you have a guy that's getting more attempts by his team per game, he gets the deeper looks. He's already averaging 15 more yards per catch. And then at the end of the season, he's going to be facing Atlanta, Carolina, Houston, Minnesota, Tennessee, and Minnesota again. Those are favorable matchups where Kenny Golladay can win you a week. So if I'm choosing between 2 guys, does A.J. Brown give me a better floor? Maybe. But who gives me the ceiling to win me the league and bring me back at the end of the year? And who has a chance to still finish as a top 5 because he can put up monster weeks with a bigger passing offense with Darrell Bevel and more passing game? I'm going to take Kenny Golladay.
See, I'm leaning on the other side. I like A.J. Brown in this one.
For the floor or?
For the ceiling.
Ceiling.
Because we saw him hit a ceiling this past week with the 2 touchdowns for 116 yards. And if that's his ceiling, I am happy for it all the time. If he's going to hit it, I mean, he's had multiple games with 20-plus fantasy points. Kenny Golladay is chilling. I think we're seeing more of a floor from Kenny Golladay. You may say that, but how many opportunities are they going to have in Detroit to see that floor? I mean, to see that ceiling with the unleashing of DeAndre Swift.
Well, I think Swift benefited from having Golladay back, and that was what was able to open up the lanes for him to run through. So I think it's an opposite reaction and you saw the same thing happen for A.J. Brown. Derrick Henry was wide open and able to run the ball because they had to worry a little bit about him. So the offense in general,
they're very similar.
Right. The offense in general tends to flow better because both guys are back on the field. And now Tennessee's going to get Corey Davis. You see the Lions kind of taking that step after the bye week to give the ball more to, DeAndre Swift, that it's a changing of the guard of the offense. But Kenny Galladay's deep threat ability, like that long pass ability, he is the field stretcher and the home run hitter. I feel like he can put one of those games together where he can just compile a bunch of stats and outscore A.J. Brown the rest of the way.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of it, man. I'm looking at the yards after catch for A.J. Brown, what he did last year, his speed, his size, and the game management from Ryan Tannehill to Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford gives up the ball a lot more than Ryan Tannehill does. I think the Tennessee Titans have a more established game script on what they want to do moving forward. And I think the Lions are starting to play catch up to that. But I'll take Mark Vrabel over Matt Patricia any day of the week.
Oh, agreed as far as the coaches go. And
I think it works into the players' game script and how they perform as well.
Yeah, I like that. I would just call it A.J. Brown gives you security and makes you feel safer. And Kenny Golladay gives you upside.
You're hoping for that those big days to win you those 40-point games.
Your catchable ball percentage is 90-66 in favor of Kenny Golladay. So, when he gets the opportunities that he gets, maybe not as much volume as A.J. Brown, he can make big plays. And
I love both of these guys. I want both of them on my team.
Yeah,
right now.
we're both on my team, especially where
both of their offenses are coming alive at the right time.
And they were guys that you could have traded for because of all the different things happening.
Rub it in. I have A.J. Brown in a couple of in at least one of my leagues. I know I have a share.
I don't, but I got myself some Kenny Golladay shares.
I have Kenny Golladay in Dynasty.
Yeah, you got him forever.
I sure do. Yeah. I love hearing that.
What do you want for him?
Got him forever. What?
You just got 2 offers.
You want Terry McLaurin?
I want a McGriddle.
I got receivers all day.
You can make that happen.
Egg and cheese McGriddle from Japan.
We going to McDonald's after this?
From Japan.
I'm loving it.
Hashtag not a sponsor, but delicious. Thank you very much. All right, so that wraps up our wide receivers. We have one position left to tackle. Get it? Because it's football. This is great. All right, so we're going to go back and forth between our tight end 9 and our tight end 10 in PPR, 9 being Hayden Hurst, sitting there with 59.7 fantasy points versus Dalton Schultz at 59 fantasy points. That's 9 versus 10.
That's risky business right there, dude.
Oh boy.
We're digging deep. Bear with us.
It's going down. I mean, the tight end landscape this year has been like it is almost every year, but this year more than ever is
by
evolving.
0.3 in some spots.
You have to know these guys, though. If you're relevant right now and you still are alive in your fantasy league, it's because you know these names, and we put them up on the waiver wire heroes for you.
Mm-hmm.
Schultz was on there in like week 2, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's been around since the beginning.
After the Blake Jarwin injury?
Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah, he was. He went right up there.
You want to pick one of these guys, Chef, or you want me to go?
I'm going with Hurst.
Oh, man.
You know, it's the security blanket effect.
Yeah.
Every quarterback needs their tight end.
Yeah.
And Andy Dalton, as much as he will need Dalton Schultz through this, I think that Hurst evolves in that position with that offense moving forward. I wasn't too keen on him in the beginning of the season because I knew of the preseason woes that we've had. We didn't really have any preseason games, not a lot of time to gel. But I think with all the pieces on that offense back, Hurst will strive a little bit more in this offense.
I like how you said need.
Yeah, and you can see his targets moving up at the beginning of the season. I mean, he had 1 reception in week 3. Then he had 4 receptions in week 4. And then 4 receptions. He went 4 for 4 against Minnesota for 57 yards and a touchdown. It's starting to come together for Hurst. Dalton Schultz, I liked him as soon as he moved in there. I spent a high waiver claim, a lot of fab on him to claim him in all my leagues. But I am staying away from Andy Dalton with a 13.5-foot pole.
Well, here's the thing, and that's why I said that I liked that you said the word need. Reason being is I think that Andy Dalton is going to need a security blanket. And I think Dalton Schultz is going to be that security blanket, especially if he's got all them mouths to feed and people's dropping passes.
Speak on it.
I'm going to tell you right now, I think, we all think, maybe not we y'all, but me, I'm going to go, Dalton Schultz on this one because of the need and because of the security blanket. It's a gross thing to want to but I feel like
all right, one of a kind.
Okay, that's me. So
hit us with it, brother.
Well,
be the deciding vote.
All right. So real quickly to pick between the two, I the way I broke down these receivers and these tight ends was receptions, yards after catch, touchdowns, deep targets in general, target share, team pass percentage, and then catchable ball rate. And
that's a lot of numbers.
It's a lot of numbers, but the only places where Hayden Hurst wins is touchdowns, which is a good variable. It's something that can go up or down, and it's only 3-2, and then 4-3 in deep targets. So he's been targeted on passes more than 20 yards down the field, and then the target share, which was 13.5. Everything else, Dalton Schultz wins. And what you said, Mr. Swanson, is going to tip me the scale in the other way for me, and I'm gonna go Schultz. I was leaning Hurst the whole day, and I'm going with Schultz simply because of that. Because I saw enough from Andy Dalton to scare me off of all of the receivers, and made me think that it's dump down season. It's going to be CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, and Zeke out of the backfield, quick and easy.
Tony Pollard.
Yeah, listen, Andy Dalton, 2.52 seconds per pass attempt is faster than everybody else in the league. Like, it was number 1 in the league while he was still active. So he's getting rid of the ball real quick. And they're going to need to do that now without Zach Martin, and the offensive line has been hurt. I believe that they're going to go to a quicker passing game, and Schultz will have more opportunity than Hayden Hurst going forward. So it's, again, we're splitting freaking hairs, but yeah.
But no, it makes sense though. On both sides, it makes sense. But yeah, I'm going to lean
Schultz. That's the problem with deciding who to pick, but Dalton Schultz.
All right. We're going to go on to the last one. Last one. Jumping to tight end 17 versus tight end 19. Tight end 17, Austin Hooper with a whopping 48.5 fantasy points versus tight end 19 with a less than expected 44.6 points from Evan Ingram.
You see this guy over here? You see him? You see him over here?
That's my man's in them.
That's my man's in them.
But you're picking against them, ain't you?
I'm leaning Hooper.
Oh,
Reluctantly,
crud.
I am
All
leaning
right.
Hooper.
Why
Hooper
you
over the
got Hooper?
last 3 weeks, we've
Give it
seen
to
his
me.
targets go up, man. He's starting to get accustomed to that offense. He's starting to get utilized more in that offense compared to Evan Ingram, who has had every chance in the world for the past 4 weeks with Sterling Shepard to be out and Saquon Barkley being out to see his target share and his receptions fly through the roof. And even against teams like Dallas and Washington, we did not see the production that I wanted to see to solidify Evan Ingram as even a high-end tight end 2, a streamer. That's what we've come to with Evan Ingram. It's
Yikes.
sad, man.
He was drafted up so much higher, and
He
for
was
good reason on
wasn't he a
paper.
second-round pick? I believe Evan Ingram was
in the
what?
real draft. In
in the
NFL?
real NFL draft.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, draft.
I have to
I
look
was
that
thinking
up because that is just terrible.
He may have been like a late first rounder, actually, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact.
I thought he was first round.
Listen, I love Evan Ingram, and you guys know this. I had him slated to be the tight end 1 for this year.
I remember you said he would finish as
And
tight end.
I won't
1.
be like these other people that make these claims on here
Yeah,
and then do whatever.
You're
they
right.
Want.
First round,
First round.
23rd overall.
Yeah, late first rounder
in the 2017 NFL draft.
And he still has flashed that talent, and he still has that ability.
He's got the talent.
And you got, listen, I have zero empirical data to state my claim here. In between these
so
two guys,
sad.
There's two categories that Evan Ingram is leading right now, Austin Hooper: targets per game and the amount of passes that his team throws. So volume of passing offense. And that's it.
But he's not catching those passes.
Absolutely. So he's not producing the results as of yet. It's a combination of Daniel Jones being inaccurate, the offense being off schedule, Saquon Barkley is not there. There's a bunch of excuses that you can make, and you're either an apologist for the Giants or an apologist for Daniel Jones, or you're facing facts, or you're delusional like me. And I think the talent somehow wins out. I am crazy. I'm delusional.
You're delusional. You have to be delusional on this
because
one. Austin Hooper's production has been a solid double-digit fantasy point production for the past 3 weeks, and that was up against Dallas. Okay, we saw Evan Ingram up against Dallas, didn't do squat.
He scored a touchdown.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, he did. He ran one in.
Yeah.
All right.
Showed his talent and got
up against Indianapolis, 10 points. Pittsburgh, 10 points. Now they play Cincinnati, Las Vegas before they go into their bye, and then come out of the bye and play Houston, who is getting destroyed by tight ends.
Philly, Jacksonville, and Tennessee back.
They get Nick Chubb back. How tight is this Browns offense going to be moving forward? They are starting to click on offense. That Stefanski offense is clicking. The New York Giants, and I am a diehard Giants fan. I bleed blue.
It's so weird when you see
that's what it is. But I'm not. I can't do it anymore, man. I love this guy. I love his talent. But if the production and the opportunities aren't there, I have to take my foot off the gas. I have a little bit more faith with Austin Hooper moving forward.
Hooper gives me like, again, Chef, we're going with safe floor. Hooper gives you the feeling, but he's still getting more targets, Evan Ingram.
Let me ask you this then, because if we're going to the end of the season, and the end of the season is week 16, would you rather have Evan Ingram
not against
the Ravens?
No, not against the Ravens. That's
or Austin Hooper against the Jets.
Austin Hooper against the Jets. That's a no-brainer.
But there's splitting hairs.
But there's a lot of games in between, and right now he's getting more targets per game, and he is the better physical gifted player. So,
but if he's not doing anything with the targets,
right?
I mean, you would hope that he would.
Problem.
Going forward, it seems like Evan Ingram. I'm liking what I see.
The schedule.
He plays Philly week 7.
It opens up.
I wish I had Evan Ingram in leagues with you guys. I would sell him right now.
Well,
he plays Philly twice and Washington before the bye.
And I'm not selling him. I'm sticking with it. That's my
holding.
That's my stubborn play.
You've always loved Evan Ingram.
I've always loved Evan.
That's why I put him on here.
Listen, man, when we first started this podcast, one thing that we said was it's never too high to reach for your guy. Stick with that guy, do that guy. So if Evan Ingram's your guy, I'd like to see how this one plays out, man.
Hey, and listen, when you pick one of these guys,
never too late to drop him and skate.
Yeah, but
How about that?
Well, that's 8 and
Oh,
skate.
It's a new one.
We gotta do a remix.
That's for
It's another one.
and another one. But so the chef,
8 and
he has
skate. I remember that.
his take, and he's giving up on him.
Giving
But
up.
I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna hold him, and I'm hoping that he thrives, man. I'm hoping that he thrives. And speaking of thrive, check out Thrive Fantasy. So they have great new games on Thrive Fantasy for you. You can choose 10 over-unders at Thrive Fantasy NFL Sunday Prop Contest. $25 to enter, $3,750 to first place, $15,000 in guaranteed prizes. Use code TIRPOD when you sign up and receive an instant deposit match of up to $50, a minimum of $20 deposit. Hashtag prop up. So the NFL hashtag prop up lives are on at Thrive Fantasy for the Giants versus the Eagles. Again, enter our code TIRPOD when you sign up and receive an instant deposit match of up to $50, minimum $20 deposit required. Will Julio Jones score against the Lions? At Thrive Fantasy has 4K GTD hashtag NFL TDs contest only this week. So just pick who's going to score a touchdown and win. Again, TIR pod.
I'm going to take a trip across the river into Philly and log in and place my bet.
I've been thinking about doing that.
I'm so mad.
Just because
New
it's not
Jersey,
available in
New Jersey, get on board with Thrive Fantasy, okay?
Please
Let them play.
Talk
Let
to your legislators.
What is this? Come on, just because we got a
My
little
eyes
city
twitching
thing, we
over
got
here. I
enough
got
gambling
so much
pushes.
stress.
There's
I can't
something
place a bet in my home state of
for
New Jersey.
Christ's sake.
To
Atlantic
vote on
City
medical
shouldn't even
marijuana.
be-
You can't let us play Thrive.
Tell me
You can't
about
let us
it.
thrive as a people.
Maron,
Oh,
listen,
I love
listen. $50 bonus. That's more than a $20 bonus. It's a $50 bonus. Listen, it's a $9 and 20. It costs $9.25 to get from here to Philly now, in tolls. God, I had to pay that toll. For those who don't know, who don't live here in New Jersey.
Thanks, Biden.
Oh yeah, all over the country. All over the country.
Thanks, whoever the hell it was. Yeah, we've been paying. No,
Biden
I mean,
was in Delaware minding his business, and we was.
No, I'm talking
tolls.
about the recent
Thank you,
hike
Christy
from the
Whitman.
expressway. The $3 toll that went up to the $425 toll.
I think that was Chris
Overnight,
Christie's
with
term.
no warning. Yo, it happened overnight with no warning. I pull up to the thing. I gave her $3, and she looked at me like I was the crazy one. I'm like, "Are you absolutely what?" All right, and rent. I bought a helicopter. Everything's okay.
And rent.
It's a big
Don't live in
drone.
states with tolls.
Yeah, we should just all ride around in helicopters. It'd be a lot easier.
Just get a big enough drone that can hold you. Just lose a lot of weight. Get a big enough drone. You can go wherever you want.
All right. So that was Tilt the Scales. That was a great segment, man. That was a lot of fun, dude.
It was a lot of work, cuz.
I'm glad we brought that back.
It was a deep dive.
It made
Good
your one of a kind brain expand a little bit, I think.
Made me work for it.
Like Pinky and the brain.
Nice.
Yeah, so like
love the anime.
you killed that, Juan. That was great. That was a great exercise, and we should definitely do that again. Maybe on a smaller scale. Maybe we tilt those scales a little bit more towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
and for our playoff push, that's what we definitely should do. We should definitely playoff push it. Who do you want going in to the playoffs? And we'll deal with some personal rosters. Maybe that might be fun because we might be going up against each other in a couple leagues.
Hopefully.
Not me, though. My teams suck.
I'll see you in the playoffs.
I'll see you in the playoffs. All right. So if your teams are like mine and some of them are really terrible and some of them are actually really good. All right. I'm downgrading myself a little bit. In some of the leagues with the big boys, I'm actually doing pretty well. I'm on a 2-win streak in the Scott Fish Bowl. I am crushing the DHH
3
league.
wins for a streak, Chef. It's only back to back.
All right, so I'm going back to back after going 0-4. Okay, or 1-3. No, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter at this point. At this point, I'm scraping the barrel. But in some leagues, I'm actually doing well, and it's all because of this waiver wire hero sheet. And Mr. Swanson, I give you credit for one of the best ideas for our small little company that we're running here, our nonprofit, as I should say. And if you want to help us out, check out our Patreon account, and you can leave a donation. It does exist.
I was going to say
it does exist.
It's nonprofit until you use one of our lineups in your DraftKings and make a couple bucks.
I think I need to start selling this waiver wire hero sheet for premium content only in our Patreon account, and it would cost you $1, folks. Can I get $1?
Do we
You can
have?
get more than $1.
I don't want to hear that.
Putting it in
God damn, it's a
DraftKings.
lot of money. Like,
Do we
you've been
have-
putting it in DraftKings. You've been winning money.
Mhm.
I've been winning money in DraftKings.
Do we have a
Mr.
Patreon?
Swanson, you better be winning money in DraftKings.
Yeah.
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 I've been saving it up for some things.
But this sheet
Yeah,
is gold.
$180 because I put $20 on the fact that Freddie Freeman would swing at the first pitch, and he did, and he almost hit it out, and Mookie Betts robbed it. But yeah, and then I put 20 on Kelsey scoring the first touchdown, and that was another $1.70. So
you've been doing great on.
I hit Kelsey on the first touchdown this week as well, and I took Arizona and the under all over the place. I crushed it this week at the last in the last hour of this week 6 football in gambling. Yeah. I took a $10 free bet. Well, I was telling you one. I took a $10 free bet. I made $40. I put that $40 on Monday night and wound up walking away with $160.
Nice
on Monday night.
Learn how to be a degenerate right here at thetiltisreal.com.
Yeah, well, we're straight tilting all the time, and sometimes I tilt on the over-unders, and I like playing those underdog bets, man. Those underdog bets get you so much money.
And that's where the underdogs are, is on the Waiver Wire Hero Show. These are guys that were under-owned, under percentage played, and guys that you might be able to scoop up in your league and help you win this week.
And for those of you that are watching and following along or checking us out on the YouTube channel, we're going to put it up here now. You're going to check out the screen. It's going to block us out for a second.
3, 2, 1, straight.
Oh,
that's an improvement.
Oh, that is a week 7.
Speak for yourself there, handsome.
Hey, look at that team. That team is handsome.
That team is handsome. I would love to have this team.
I can't believe that some of these ownership percentages, though, Chef. Like Justin Herbert, 50.2% owned. Like he should be owned in all leagues, bro.
Right.
He's been putting up top 12 numbers.
You know
these numbers are before waivers
this
run.
week, yeah.
Obviously in week 7, but yeah, these were the numbers after week 6, and that's why and everybody's loving Justin Herbert now. I went out and I bought Justin Herbert wherever I could. Boston Scott, that's the obvious pick there, and people were spending up for him. I lost by $1 on Boston Scott today, and it just crushed my soul.
I hope you bet a dollar.
No, I bet $22, and I lost by $1.
Who'd you lose to? Was it in one of the
It's in one of the Foot Clan leagues.
Well, listen, if you lost Boston Scott because it was a no-brainer, somebody that was coming in to fill in for an injury for Miles Sanders, but then you have a guy like J.D. McKissick who makes our list, who, regardless of whether or not Gibson is playing, he still holds his own value, and he's only 17.8% owned, and I believe he's one of the few running backs in the league who's had 7 or more targets in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, you're seeing J.D. McKissick being used more often, with Antonio Gibson failing to get that breakout that we've been looking for him. And I'm starting to get nervous. I really am. After that one breakout game by Antonio Gibson, he put up 20 plus fantasy points for that week. He was awesome against Baltimore, which was surprising.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been J.D. McKissick when the Redskins have been falling behind, and we saw it up against stout defenses. Man, they're going with the more experience with J.D. McKissick.
Maybe better in pass pro, more familiar with the pass blocking, and
the next guy, Frank Gore, we're talking about here now, is he has all the experience in the world, and he's not dust yet. He really isn't. Compared to, all right, let's put it into perspective real fast. Would you rather play Frank Gore or Joshua Kelly?
Wow, you made it tough because I was going to go with whoever else you said after Frank Gore. You could have said Inspector Gadget, and I would have been like Inspector Gadget. But then you said Josh Kelly, and I'm like,
Would you play
Frank
Gore or JaMycal Hasty?
JaMycal Hasty.
Ooh.
He's a jitterbug. I like that ball. Like, he moves like a little jitterbug. He was good.
Go ahead. Yeah, I like JaMycal Hasty.
All right, give me some upside. Listen, that Jets offense as a whole, I don't want anything to have to do with the Jets. Even Jamison Crowder, who's been producing, and he's been a top 20 wide receiver 3 times this year, I don't want anything to do with the Jets.
I agree with you there, and you don't want anything to do with the Jets. But the fact that Frank Gore is out there and available, and if you need a fill-in piece on your bye week, he could be viable for at least 8 to 9 fantasy points.
And he's
flex spot.
And he could fall in the end zone. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He's got a better chance of falling in the end zone against Buffalo, who is poor against the run game.
Yep.
Than Josh McKelly doing it.
Hey, listen, the Kansas City Chiefs ran the ball 46 times against the Buffalo Bills. So if the Jets stay committed, in which they probably will because they did it against the Dolphins, they may have some success.
Is it Frank Gore? No, we don't know.
No.
But I'm telling you, and I was doing this sheet, he was the only other running back available.
Yeah, they're all taken
with this percentages.
Yeah.
And
we have
that
pretty strict rules though, because we go by 50%.
I keep it 50 and under, man,
Right.
and that's tough. Everybody else has been going over to 60, and this isn't the point of this waiver wire sheet. We're not just going there and saying, okay, you're going to pick up this guy for this week. No, you're picking up this guy, and he's going to produce for you down the road as well,
long term too.
And that's the next guy, Christian Kirk.
Yep.
This week going up against Seattle, he's only 41.7% owned. Everybody was out on Christian Kirk, including myself, but yet he had a big game where it counted, and now he is thrust into this Seattle matchup, this NFC West matchup. And I think he does well with DeAndre Hopkins taking most of the load off of everything else. DeAndre Hopkins is going to do great. Sure. He's the number one target in the offense, but they've been stretching the field with that certain play where they can't cover the other side. They're doubling up on D-Hop a little too much, and we're starting to see Andy Isabella get open. We're starting to see Christian Kirk get open, and Kyler Murray having the confidence to step up in the pocket instead of tucking it and run and hitting those long bombs. And I think it continues right here against the Seattle Seahawks.
I think they may have to, just to keep the game script right, just to keep themselves in the game. So Christian Kirk going forward is another one of those guys. And another game that may have one of those game scripts because there's so many injuries to the Philadelphia Eagles and they're going to have to try to compete is Travis Fulgham. And going forward, Mr. Swanson was one of the guys that had him. I know he did in a couple of our leagues. And I didn't really buy into it because I know it's only a matter of time before Rager and Deshaun come back. But he may have etched out a role for himself, like you said, Chef, not just for 1 week, but going forward.
Travis Fulgham? Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Until all those pieces come back, we heard Deshaun Jackson coming back this week. Hopefully, I believe he's off the injury report and he practiced in full. So he may.
But until we'll see what shape is he in.
Absolutely, 100%. Jalen Reagor going to come back. He's going to get more touches as well. Maybe Travis Fulgham moves into that Greg Ward spot, and Greg Ward loses the touches, and they have an arsenal of three field stretchers, which would be awesome for Carson Wentz. Another field stretcher on this list, T. Higgins, going up against Cleveland this week, 48% owned. Go out and get T. Higgins if he's available in your leagues.
Right. There's no Greedy Williams.
Already. He's been on this list 3 times. There's no excuse this time. If you don't have T. Higgins on your roster, get it.
It might be too late for you by now. Yeah.
You're not listening. Anthony Ferkser, the tight end that comes in on this list next, up against Pittsburgh. I like him and don't like him. It all depends on what Jonnu Smith is doing.
It's a hold. You got to wait and see on that injury to Jonnu Smith.
It was a very quiet injury and a very fast sit on Jonnu Smith. If you had Anthony Ferkser in DFS, you won the Millie Maker this week.
Yeah. That's all.
Another surprising name is Tim Patrick on this list. Going up against Kansas City, he's probably not going to do too much against Kansas City's defense, but he has been the number one target on that Broncos offense with and without Drew Lock. So, and that's with Noah Fant not being there. So if Noah Fant comes back, you say maybe may see his production move down a little bit, but I believe Tim Patrick is a part of this offense as long as Cortland Sutton isn't coming back in 2020, which he's not.
He's not, yeah.
It's not Deshaun Hamilton, and it's not KJ Hamler.
He's been injured. He hasn't been back yet. We're not sure if he's going to come back. Yeah,
and he's been a healthy scratch here or there as well. So it's Tim Patrick. Keep an eye on him.
He might be a good play this week, coming from behind against Kansas City in a negative game script. He might see some targets, and he doesn't take a lot for him either.
And our last guy on our starting roster for the waiver wire heroes is Russell Gage going up against Detroit. I was off of him the last couple weeks. He had a couple bad matchups. I thought he can hold it on. With Julio Jones being out, I thought his production would go up. It was the other way around. Matt Ryan did not feel confident utilizing him. Couldn't rely on him.
He was also injured in one of those games.
Zacchaeus was an option up against Green Bay. Excuse me. and Calvin Ridley wasn't alive when Julio Jones. So the whole offense really fell apart without Julio Jones, and Russell Gage suffered because of that. That being said, Russell Gage coming back this past week was a viable flex play in some leagues with Julio Jones on the field. So moving up against Detroit, I don't know if Desmond Trufant is healthy or not. He may actually play this week. If that happens, Russell Gage could be open a little bit more than people expect.
Yeah, this could be a shootout either way. So this could be one of those games where all the wide receivers and all the weapons get a chance to eat. And that's all you want is opportunity.
All right, so another guys that didn't make our starting roster was Teddy Bridgewater, Gus Edwards, Brandon Ayuk, and Dallas Goedert, and of course Tua Tagovailoa. There's an N in there. I know there is.
There's not.
Say the N word.
Tagovailoa.
Tagovailoa.
I know, I'm teasing with you. Dallas Goedert is a guy to keep an eye on. I just recently did a piece on him with Ball Blast Fantasy Football.
Congratulations, Chef.
Ball Blast FF on Twitter.
So cool.
They put out some great stuff. Matthew Betts, who does the DFS podcast for the Fantasy Footballers, works for them. And Michelle and Kate also put out great content. Just a quick little plug for them. If you're listening to us, you need to be listening to them. They know what they're doing. There's a great team over there, and I'm honored to be a part of that. I just put out my first Dynasty article.
Moving on up
to the east side.
No,
to the east side.
Yeah, you were in the NFC East.
Yeah. But I just did a great piece on Dallas Goedert over there, and it's a quick little dynasty piece on why you need to own Dallas Goedert going forward. I'm not going to go into details. I'm not going to give away any pieces.
No spoilers.
Go check out my Twitter account. There is a link on there.
Go to ballblast.com. Is that where we go to check it out?
Yes, you can go to ballblastff.com to check it out. Ballblast Fantasy Football. Check it out. And you can follow me on Twitter. I have a direct link now. It's
man,
kind of official, bro.
It's official tissue.
At BallBlastFF on Twitter. They're great over there. Okay. Let's get this thing going, man. We spent way too much time on the heroes. We are the heroes at this podcast, our podcast, sitting at the chef's table. Mr. Swanson swading through the darkness. Waiting.
Sorry. I almost dropped Alvin Kamara by accident.
Oh, wow.
Don't do that.
Trying to pick up a defense. I'm so tired.
Well, if you're trying to pick up a defense, man, go check out. You must be up Blitzkrieg without a paddle.
Yeah, I am, because I have the Colts defense, as many of you know who are listening to this show. Yeah. So got to pick one up. I picked up. I'm not happy about who I picked up. I'm not going to tell you who I picked up.
You put your waiver claim in for?
Yeah, I did that. It's probably not that big of a deal, but I don't know. People are sneaky in this league.
Well, maybe if you're reading I hope it's not on the show sheet, if that's the
case. No.
Okay.
I don't know. It might be. I do silly things.
All right. Who's your defensive streamer, Mr. Swanson? We've been diving deep over here. I want to hear your river bend. Go ahead.
I'm gonna take the Chargers.
Ooh.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that because it's getting to the point where you might have to pick up a defense. You might not. The Chargers are only rostered in 27% of leagues.
Nice.
And they're a great start this week against Jacksonville. And the thing is, you can actually hold on to them and play them against the Broncos in week 8. That's my defensive streamer of the week. Yeah, it's a double dip, because then you don't.
I like the double dip.
That's good. You don't have to pick them up every week. That's a good one.
Yeah, save your fab.
Save that fab.
Jeff?
I don't know, man. Why gotta be me?
All right, I'll go if you want. You want me to go?
I'm teasing.
Right.
I guess I'll go. My stream of the week. I hate to say this again. It's the Eagles versus the Giants. Okay, the Giants still not doing their thing. We saw the Eagles start to slow down Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. We saw the Eagles stand tough against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I do not like Darius Slayton up against Darius Slay. I really don't. I think the Eagles hold us down. They slow our running game down, which Devontae Freeman's been doing a great job for what we have.
Not too bad.
I think they make Daniel Jones make mistakes. And as much as I want to see the Giants in the lead in the NFC least, I think the Eagles take it, dude.
Okay. I'm going to stay in your division because why not?
Yeah,
You
sure.
know what I'm saying? If you're gonna
Join
stay
the club. Let's name all four.
Stay. We want to stay in the NFC least. And I'm going to go with the Washington football team.
Wait, I was going to say, who are the...
Yeah, no surprise here with that team because Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, the artist Payne, like that front four, Ryan Kerrigan against Andy Dalton, who we saw he got slightly victimized. So he got slightly victimized on Monday night against an Arizona team that had no Chandler Jones and doesn't have the strongest defense in the world. And we saw him get picked off, and we saw Zeke fumble the ball. And an opportunistic type of defense. I think that the Washington defense can put enough pressure to make Andy Dalton make some mistakes. And that's a defense that if I was going to stream this week, I'm going to bank on them getting 3, 4, 5 sacks. No Zach Martin, no Lyle Collins, no Tyron Smith. That is a depleted offensive line on the Dallas side. And first-round talent, 5 of them, going after a quarterback. I'll take my chances with that defense. A Blitz Creek without a paddle.
Ooh, riding that river. I love it. I love that segment.
Yeah,
without a paddle. Yeah,
me too. That's a good one, man. That's
all right. I think that's another one in the bank. That's another one done. Job well done, fellas. We made it through.
This was the roulette table one. This is 17 on the roulette table. Baby.
I got torpedoed.
Yeah, we all. Hey, you made it through. You didn't sink your battle chip.
Yeah, no,
it was a direct hit, but you didn't sink.
You swams.
Swangs. I swangs.
Swangs.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you.
You can find me at ff_chef on Twitter. My name is James Crease. Check out my work at Ball Blast FF and working with Fantasy Intervention as well. That at Fantasy Intervention _
at Join Our Circle.
At Join Our Circle. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Join Our Circle. All 3 of us are there, and
Yes,
we're putting out some good content. Juan and I have another thing to do right after this.
The 6-pack, baby.
So I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you so much. Juan, you want to ride out? Say your kudos.
At FF One of a Kind, Juan Carlos Pena, and that's where you can find me. Pretty easy. We'll be doing a 6-pack shortly, and we have a great producer who's gonna take us all the way out.
I'm gonna take you all the way out. Y'all can find me at FF John JAWN Swanson. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening. You make this very fun for us. We love to do this, and we love to do it with you. Enjoy your spooky October month. We gonna take it out right now. We will see you guys on the next episode once I find the outro button.
Sunday morning, Tilt is real.
Sunday Tilt, baby.
Sunday Tilt, baby.
You guys watch this. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Tilt is Real Fantasy Podcast. Check out our website at thetiltisreal.com for weekly articles, breakdowns, and more. Follow us on Twitter at TIR_pod. We'll see you Tilters next week.